They're turning to the battle over the high court. President Trump expected to announce his nomination to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court 1 week from today. The president said expect it July 9th. He's under pressure to make sure that Roe v. Wade is not a litmus test for his Supreme Court nominees. I spoke with the president in an exclusive interview this weekend, and I asked him if nominees would be asked beforehand what their vote might be on Roe versus Wade.
Well, that's a big one, and probably not. They're all saying, don't do that, you don't do that, you shouldn't do that.
Because on the campaign trail, you said you would leave it to the states.
Well, maybe someday it will be to the states. You never know how that's going to turn out. That's a very complex question.
And do you think you'll be able to get your nominee in place before the midterm elections?
I think it's going to go very quickly. I think we're going to have a lot of support. I think we're going to have support from Democrats.
Joining us right now, Dwayne, is Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. So, Democratic support, I mean, he may need it if he doesn't have Senator McCain, he doesn't have Senator Corker.
He doesn't have probably won't have Senator Collins, might not have Jeff Flake, and he might not have Lisa Murkowski. I say might not because this Roe versus Wade issue is a very serious one. So, my take from your compelling interview, watch the whole thing, obviously, was they tell me not to ask. I'm not so sure that I should do it. But those questions have already been asked in his behalf. I'm looking at McD because we're talking about this during the break. No one would have gotten on that 25-person list. There's 24 judges and Senator Lee. No one would have gotten on that list if they had not had a conversation with the people who prepared the list for the president. The conversation goes like this. Was Roe versus Wade rightly decided? Not what you vote to get rid of it. Was it rightly decided? Is this really a federal issue? Should it be resolved by legislators closer to the people rather than by 9 black-robed judges? That's the kind of conversation. So I can say with confidence, every person on that list of 25 is pro-life. That doesn't mean that every one of them would vote to repeal Roe versus Wade. John Roberts, who's the Chief Justice of the United States, is a practicing Catholic and publicly pro-life. I don't think he would vote to repeal Roe versus Wade because of his views about people relying on the existence of laws, people coming of age expecting the existence of laws, and the legacy of the Supreme Court.
Kennedy surprised everybody. They thought he was going to vote one way, and then he actually went the other way.
Well, you know, Ronald Reagan campaigned against Roe versus Wade and said, I'm going to put justices on the court that will vote to overturn it. But Sandra Day O'Connor did not. She was the opposite. Anthony Kennedy did not. He was the opposite. George H.W. Bush, same thing. David Souter did not. He was the opposite. So you can't always predict how a justice is going to go, but Donald Trump has done something that no other president, I'm going to say in the modern era, maybe ever has done. Outsourced to others whose ideology he trusts the business of creating the list. Many of them are people he put on the federal court. So not only were they examined by the outside group, they were also examined by Don McGahn, as White House counsel, and his team, who actually peppered them with aggressive questions that we lawyers call a murder board. It's what you go through in preparation for a high-profile oral argument. They know exactly where these people stand on the hot-button issues. But again, it depends on how the case comes to you, what your colleagues are, who the plaintiff is, and what the plaintiff's relief is being sought. You can't always say yes, no, right, wrong, stop, go.
You know, Judge, you already brought up Chief Justice Roberts, who, despite his leanings, you mentioned may not be eager to overturn or question the constitutionality of Roe versus Wade. Just thinking ahead and assuming that Kennedy's successor is appointed by a Republican Senate. Looking ahead, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, they're both getting on in years. Beyond them, thinking about the other 3 current conservative justices on the court, Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch, do any of those 3 have the same kind of leanings where it's not really a lightning rod for them, where it's not clear that they would work to question the constitutionality of Roe versus Wade?
You know, that's a good question, and I can't answer it directly, but I can say this. If you look at recent history, the least conservative of the conservative bloc becomes the swing vote. Sandra Day O'Connor, she leaves. Anthony Kennedy, he leaves. Who will be the swing vote now? The Chief Justice. which in my view will make him the most powerful Chief Justice in the modern era. He will sit between 4 liberals and 4 conservatives.
And by the way,
he will go back and forth as O'Connor once did and as Kennedy once did.
And there's no reason to suggest, with Justice Roberts being a wild card, he clearly has been, that he will basically overturn gay marriage in this country, because again, the decision was made so recently. So I just want to push back on the hysteria from the left.
I agree with you. Look, if the worst case scenario from the perspective of the left is Roe versus Wade is overturned, it's up to the states. It would be legal here in New York and in New Jersey and California because the people's legislators would vote for it. But I don't see it being overturned because Chief Justice Roberts is interested in the court's institutional integrity and legacy. And that means you don't change something fundamental and integral just because of an election.
Right. I agree with you. Judge, great to see you.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Judge Andrew Napolitano there. Stay with us. We'll be right back.